another episode of the Gold Country Media Sports Jam. I'm Jordan.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Matt.
Happy New Year, everyone. What's been going on? You guys have a good New Year's Eve?
Sure did.
It was pretty good. I hung out with some friends. Actually, went to the arcade at the mall, and driving home, it was crazy because I was like 25, 30 mile an hour gust of wind. So like I'm holding on the steering wheel for dear life, and you could hear the gale force winds through the glass of the window. I mean, it was rainy. It was definitely storming for sure, but fortunately, it let up by 11, and so we still did some poppers outside, and of course, bang pots and pans like usual for the midnight drop. But yeah, it was good.
I like it. Matt, what about you?
Hey, our tradition is 9 p.m. is when the ball drops in our house. So we just have munch down some ice cream sundaes. So
I think you should have stuck with the 9 a.m. Be like, we watch the Singapore ball drop and then we go to bed. Yeah, we didn't do anything crazy. I went, to the in-laws' house out in Marysville, watch a little bit of the college football playoff. We had a little darts tournament in the garage and, hung out, enjoyed each other's company and hung out New Year's Day and watched a little more football and munched on some of the leftovers from New Year's Eve. So, it was pretty laid back and good weekend. The puppy was playing. The in-laws got Raider's brother, so the two puppies were running around playing the whole time. It was a good time. But
speaking of, I'm sorry, Jordan, for interrupting, but speaking of football, real quick, I think I speak for all of us here when I say that our thoughts and prayers are out to Damar Hamlin and his family. Obviously, a very tragic thing that happened on Monday Night Football. If anybody happened to watch the game, I think a lot of the time, I think as fans, just as people in general, and it's normal to, we get caught up in, kind of the horse race aspect side of things, the competition side of things with football. But, obviously the humanity of these people is, extremely important, and football is a very dangerous game. And I just hope for his wellness and safety that he ends up being okay.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that on a football field. I know I was texting Bill Poindexter, who's made a few appearances on this show, and he told me that actually, speak of the devil, he just texted me right then. But he told me the only time he's really seen anything like that he can recall is the Hank Gathers situation, which I know, Aaron, was before you and I were born. But I mean, just prayers to him. Hopefully, he makes a full recovery. I know a few years ago there was a hockey player that had a similar thing. He took a puck to the chest and went into cardiac arrest, and he went on to have a 12-year career and a Hall of Fame career after that. So, hopefully a full recovery and a similar trajectory for Hamilton on his timeline. But, kind of moving into some of our stuff, I know we had, I guess, probably a lighter week than we're used to, that little week before Christmas and New Year's. It's a light week, really there's only a couple basketball tournaments going on. But that being said, we still were at a few of those. Aaron, let's start with you. I know you were over in Roseville for some tournament action. What'd you see over in West Park? And if you can hear my dog squeaking the squeaky toy, I am very sorry. I will mute my mic while you talk.
And apologies to anybody listening to the show. I don't know if you could tell my voice is a little bit rough today. I think the cold has gotten me a little bit. I'm fine, but it just, it's that time of the year, you know what I mean? Anyways, so last week on Tuesday, I was at West Park where the Lady Panthers faced Fairfield in the West Park Winter Classic. I expected the Panthers to take that one, but that didn't happen, and the Falcons of Fairfield actually made it all the way to the championship game before losing to Wood Creek on Thursday. Wood Creek, of course, won the tournament. So that opening round matchup, West Park lost 60-49. They did make a late run to get back in the game. They were down 15 at half, down 13 entering the fourth quarter, and actually cut the lead to 8 before Fairfield senior Amani Boxdale got a 4-point play to essentially shut the door. She actually had 2 4-point plays, and both really felt like it swung momentum back Fairfield's way. So she led all scorers with 20 points in the game, while Zariah Porter had 19 for the Falcons. For the Panthers, Jill No led with 16 points. The Panthers needed to do a better job of boxing out and transition defense. They did have spurts where they were able to kind of get that done and had solid defense. They did force 23 turnovers in the game. I think some of those were just uncharacteristic passes by Fairfield. But, the Panthers also turned it over 19 times themselves, and you can't do that. And their shot selection wasn't exactly the best at times. Fairfield definitely looked to be the better to be a better team than their record showed. I think going into the game they were a 3-8 team. They looked a lot better than that, and I probably should have paid a little more attention to the quality of competition they faced. I know I've talked about that on the show the last couple of weeks, but fair play to them. West Park ended up going on to beat Bella Vista, and then I believe lost to Vacaville on Thursday. So that's how that went. And then on Thursday, I was out in the rain, not nearly as bad of a storm of rain as it was on New Year's Eve, but it was still rainy on Thursday. I was at Lincoln for a girls' soccer game between the Fighting Zebras and Rockland, and it was a good one. It was definitely, as I mentioned, definitely a challenge being out there. I was trying to shoot some pics with one hand while holding my umbrella with the other, and my umbrella, of course, breaks semi while I'm doing the game. And fortunately, big shout out to Eric Curlin for letting me borrow your umbrella out there, because otherwise I would have definitely been in a rough situation. Anyways, though, the Zebras took an early lead with a 6-minute goal by Alicia Ozagueda, but the Thunder responded right back with a strike by Leah Savage in the 7th minute. Savage added her second goal in the 21st minute. A little bit about Leah real quick. She was actually one of the star tennis players on the Rockland tennis team. Midway through the season, she broke her wrist and basically couldn't play, and she was really itching to get back out there. She actually did play in the postseason for the tennis team, who ended up going on to win the section title. She's right back out now playing soccer, and she's already scored 2 goals. So big congrats to her on that. There was an own goal in the 31st minute, and it was 3-1 Rockland at halftime. And Rockland kept possession for a fair amount of the game, especially early in the second half, but the Zebras were just more clinical. They had 5 shots, all 5 were on goal. They created really solid chances. Ozagueda scored her second in the 61st minute to make it 3-2, and then 10 minutes later, Camille Hood put it in the back of the net to tie it 3-3. Ava Vargas Quiros for Rockland scored in the 78th minute to make it 4-3, but in stoppage time for literally the last kick of the game, it was Avery Aronson, the senior over at Lincoln, that played the hero to salvage a 4-4 draw. Both of these teams, I think, are very solid. I think Rockland just played a bad defensive half, and they can't do that in the SFL when you're facing really solid teams like Oak Ridge, Whitney, plenty of solid teams in the SFL. I think we'll be seeing both of these teams in the postseason, though, and I could definitely see the Zebras contending for a league title. So that was Thursday. And then on Monday, yesterday, I was actually at 12 Bridges for the inaugural Pavlicek Classic against Rio Americano, where the Rhinos competed early but struggled on keeping the same physicality in the third quarter and ended up turning it over 23 times. Rio is one of the top 3-point shooting teams in the area. They attempt 48 threes a game. They were actually ranked 7th in the Sac Joaquin section max preps rankings going into the contest. And they were lights out in the third quarter. They had 30 points in the third quarter alone to win 80-62. There were positives for the Rhinos. They actually started by going up 8-3 early. But then, Rio went on a 10-0 run, but then the Rhinos responded back with their own run. Jacob Gilchrist had 22 points for them, led the way for the Rhinos. It was actually Kellen Collier and Jonah Gilchrist's first game in the lineup for 12 Bridges. They just finished their 30-day transfer window sit. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do once they kind of mesh chemistry-wise and actually figure out their role once they get things going in league play, which starts on Wednesday. It should be really interesting going forward. I think the Rhinos will be a contender in the PVL.
All right, I like it. And I got to ask. You said it's called the Pavlicek Classic at 12 Bridges.
Correct.
Okay, so I got 2 questions with it. One, and the dog, of course, is starting to bark right now. But the first question is, I guess, who's the namesake of it? The Pavlicek.
So my understanding, I talked a little bit to Coach Ash about after the game, and my understanding is originally they were going to play Mesa, and Mesa caught like a flu bug or something like that, so they figured that they'd scheduled against Rio. I think Ash has a good relationship with Coach Jones over there, and they're planning on going to Rio next year for it. But I want to say he said that the name has to do with something related to like something with Summer League. I don't know exactly the whole story behind it, but it has something to do with that.
All right, makes sense. And then the other question I have, if it's the first annual Pavlicek Classic, I mean, what qualifies as a classic if it's the first annual?
Well, it's inaugural, but they're planning on doing it next year, and then they'll go from there. I don't know, I don't know what makes it super special by calling it a classic, but I guess that they're preparing it for years to come, I'll say.
I like it. I feel like classic has a better ring to it, though.
I would actually like to see like a tournament of some teams too in there. I mean, I think that it was actually an interesting matchup. I think it was good for both teams. Rio was able to get some stuff cleaned up before they get into league play. 12 Bridges was able to see how they contend with one of the better teams in the area. I think at least for this year, I think it was kind of a cool matchup to watch. And it was, by the way, one of the most attended games I've seen at 12 Bridges. There was a ton of cars there. I actually had to park by the library and had to walk about 100 meters in the rain to get over to the gym. I know me complaining, first world problems, but still.
Definitely. And Matt, kind of throwing it over to you. What where were you at this week and what'd you see?
Yeah, my only team that was playing locally was Vistas Boys, who played in the Rose Bowl tournament, and I got to see their last two games of that tournament. I missed the opener, which they won. They beat Patterson, but then Tuesday I saw them against Union Maya, and they lost that 75-70. That wasn't really a good game for them. Coach Mike Verbitsky after the game said, "Hey, if you can't guard the ball, you don't get back on defense, you're not going to win very many games." And Vista didn't do either of those things. I think they lost by 5. But anyway, Logan Rexford had 34 in that game, almost half their points. Owen Pettis had 14. Jacob Zimmerman had 11. And then last Wednesday, I went to their final game against River City, and they fell behind. Didn't play very well in the first quarter, but the last 3 quarters they played pretty well, and they won the game 55-46. Again, Rexford had 21. Wes Menard had 13, and Dominic Rasami had 11. And that was their last game before league play starts this week. They finished a respectable 7-10, but their league schedule is going to be a lot harder than their non-league schedule. And for Vista, I think it just comes to defense. The better they play on defense, the better chance they're going to have of winning, because they're not an explosive offensive team. So, I know the Capital Athletic League is tough, but if they can put forth that defensive effort, they can win a few games. But if they're just going to let teams run them off the floor, then that's what's going to happen. The Vista girls, I'm just going to recap sort of my basketball teams here this week. Vista girls didn't play last week. They finished the preseason 9-4, losing to four games. Coach Marty Benjamin wished they would have won a couple of those, but they lost to teams that they probably should have lost to. So it wasn't a great preseason, but it was good. And they're ready to make a run to defend their league title this year. Folsom Boys played down, I think it was the Bay Area somewhere. I forget the city, but they won the Bam Bauer Classic 4-0 against 4 very good teams. That's coming off the loss to Rio Americano, which Mike Wall, their head coach, was not happy with. So the first thing I asked them after when they called him up, hey, those 4 wins will make you forget about that loss to Rio Americano, which he quickly agreed to. So he was very pleased with how they played, and he's looking forward again to making a run at the SFL title now. I think Folsom finished 13-1 in non-league. So again, when they're on their game, look out. Folsom girls did not. They did play one game last week. They were supposed to go down to San Diego for a tournament. 24 hours before that tournament, 24 hours before they were supposed to leave for that tournament, their flights were canceled. So they decided not to go, but they did pick up a game Thursday. Unfortunately, I forgot about that. Just remembered now. I don't have that score in front of me, but Folsom girls finished non-league 9-2. Big win over St. Mary's, and then the week before Christmas they took second in the Nike tournament in Phoenix, which was a very strong tournament, and they won 3 out of 4 games. So it was a great performance for them there, and they're again one of the best teams around. So they are the favorites to win the SFL. Oak Ridge girls, again, their flights were canceled as well, but they decided to drive down to San Diego last week for that Southern California Holiday Prep Classic, and they won 3 out of 4, and they finished non-league 10-7. So, they have a really young team, and Coach White wasn't sure, how they look. They played a difficult schedule in non-league, but they came out of it 10-7. I think he's happy with that, but he doesn't really care about records. He's more interested in how they're playing, but he feels if they continue to if they play how they can and play with the effort and energy they need, they can be successful. But he said, once again, the SFL, even though it's, it's not as strong as it was last year, if they don't bring their A game, anyone can beat them. So I think Oak Ridge boys, I'm talking to their coach right after this show, so I haven't really got an update from him, but they went 2-2 at a tournament they were at down in San Diego. So they finished December at 8-8. So they went through a lot of injuries. So that's probably a respectable record for them. And I know they plan on competing for a league title in the SFL. So hopefully they're getting healthy. I know Caleb Edwards, their big post, is back, so that'll help them in any goals they're trying to achieve. And then the Folsom Wrestling team, they were at, lastly, this was Sierra Nevada Classic in Reno last week, and they had 4 guys medal. Elias Rivera dropped down to 115 for the first time, and he placed second, only lost in the finals, and he had a great performance. And then Kai Eberg dropped down to 108. He placed 7th. Ryland Smith wrestled at 144, and he finished 8th. And then Colin Denny went 4-2 at 190 with 3 pins, and I don't know where he finished. I know he played. I don't know where he plays, but he placed. So that's all I have.
All right, I like it. And hey, I've got a little wrestling for you guys too here in a little bit. So shout out to wrestling getting in here. I was over at the Kendall Arnett tournament, which it was the 80th annual Kendall Arnett. We've been able to prove that it's the oldest annual running high school basketball tournament in California. There are claims that it's the oldest west of the Mississippi. I've talked to a few people, even a few of the former writers at the Journal that have come, well before my time, like, way back, maybe, 20, 30 years ago. And even they said that from the research they have done, they have not been able to find a tournament west of the Mississippi that's older than the Kendall Arnett that's still running. So pretty cool history. I've said, if you want a little look at what was going on in the world when the first Kendall Arnett happened, Jackie Robinson hadn't yet played in the major leagues, and he wouldn't do so for a few years, and World War II was going on. So the first tournament was 1943, but we're getting into 2020, or we're getting into 2022 as my dogs are running around the room fighting. The first game to start the tournament was Del Oro and Rio Americano, which I was very excited about to start the tournament. It was probably 2 of the best teams there. Are you guys able to hear me okay with the dog barking? Okay, cool. And, Del Oro won this one from start to finish. They made a statement against one of the best teams in the section. Rio Americano came out and they kind of punched him in the mouth. It was 5-0 to start. And then Del Oro ends up outscoring Rio 23-4 for the remainder of the first quarter. Caden Pinnick scored 12 of his 28 points in the quarter, including a 3-pointer in the final seconds of the game. And, Del Oro kind of just controlled it from there. Rio Americano they'd kind of pull closer, but Dio really controlled this one. Brandon Hill was massive down low for the Eagles. Same with Jake Williams. And those are 2 names you're going to hear a lot as I recap this tournament. But, that was a big win for Dio start. Rio Americano, I know a lot of people had as, Jesuit and Rio were the clear number 1 and number 2 teams in the section kind of going into this season. And, that was just Rio's second loss of the year, but a big win for Dio to come out and do that. And then wrapping up the opening night, Placer ended up hosting Bear River in an old Pioneer Valley League rivalry. And Bear River ended up holding their own for a little bit in the first quarter. I mean, first 5 minutes of the game, Bear River actually led for a bit. And it was 13-10 kind of 5 minutes in. And then Placer went on a 17-0 run to end the first quarter and take a 30-10 lead. And it was just, the afterburners were on from there. The backups actually played more than the starters in that one as the Hillman coasted to an 82-49 win. It's actually really cool. The Placer, rather than do their senior night on, the last home game of the year late in the season, they opt to actually do their senior night every single year on the opening night of the Kendall Arnett tournament, because they feel that, the tournament is a bigger and more, I guess, important thing for these seniors to remember than, a random league game on a Thursday in January. And, this tournament, the whole town shows up at. But then what's also cool is Coach Mark Lee is in his 28th year as the head coach of Placer. And this is his final Kendall Arnett. And they actually did a special little ceremony for him that he didn't quite know about. But he got a standing ovation from both sides of the stands. And, that was really cool to see them. Moving on in that
Jordan,
tournament.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have to ask you.
Go ahead.
They won a 17-0 run in 3 minutes.
Yes.
That's insane. Oh my god.
It might be more like 4 minutes. I didn't, necessarily look at the clock
Regardless.
right when the run started. But I mean, if you've seen Placer play this year or are familiar with their style of play, you know that they can get a lot of turnovers very, very fast. And they get a lot of baskets in transition. And a lot of times that's accompanied with some fouls too. And, you get some and ones. And when you get it flowing like that, and I've noticed that when teams kind of get, kind of punched in the mouth like that with the defense, they can get a little flustered and all of a sudden the wheels can fall off very fast. And it looked like that's what happened. And I'll get more on Bear River in a second, but kind of moving on into the winners bracket. Placer ended up taking care of business against Nevada Union on Thursday night in the semifinal. I think it was like 74-47 or something like that. And then Del Oro ended up beating Foothill in a great game, 65-54. It was a close game all game. Then Golden Eagles ended up pulling away kind of in the final minutes. But that set up a championship rematch of Del Oro and Placer. These two met earlier this year with Placer winning. And they met in the Kendall Arnett final last year with Placer winning. So Placer's got 2 in a row on them. This was an awesome game. I mean, the crowd was amazing. The atmosphere was great. The band was loud. The physicality of this game felt like a 90s NBA playoff game almost. I mean, there were a few hard fouls. You can definitely tell these two teams were looking forward to playing each other again. And you can tell they don't necessarily like each other. And if you want to ask about the physicality, just ask Brandon Hill. He knocked down 7 of 10 free throws in the fourth quarter with a black and bloodied eye that was covered by a Band-Aid partially. Jake Williams had an incredible first half for the Golden Eagles, kind of put them in front. Placer really kept Caden Pinnick, who won tournament MVP. They kept him at bay. He only had 8 points in the championship game. And, I think their kind of strategy was, we've seen what Pinnick can do. We like the matchup of Sam Herlihy and Brandon going up against Brandon Hill. So I think their game plan was, we're going to try to neutralize Pinnick as much as possible and say, beat us with anyone else. And it was kind of their strategy the first game. And I don't think, Placer expected Jake Williams to be that anyone else, but he had an incredible game for the Eagles. I believe he had 21 points. It just felt like every big shot by Del Oro was matched with one from Placer and vice versa. Dio went up 20-9 in the first quarter, and Placer ended up coming back and tying it 25-25. And then at that point, I mean, it felt like Del Oro would kind of pull away a little bit to like a 7 or 8 point lead. And then Placer would immediately close it to, a 2, 3, 4 point game. And then Dio would pull away again. So they were just on their heels the whole game. But Del Oro ended up pulling out 73-65. And an interesting stat with this, these guys aren't going to play again this year. Both these teams have played each other now twice. They are 1-1 against one another, and both games were decided by 8 points. So it does not get more even than that. They are literally tied on the season completely. And then kind of one last little shout out I want to give from the tournament was actually Bear River. They were the smallest school at this tournament, not only in size, but like enrollment, but in size of the team. They ended up taking 8th place in the tournament. So they go 0-3, but they don't field a single senior on this team. They are all sophomores and juniors. They're very small, but the way they play better than, what you would expect from a team like that. And in the last game of the tournament, they're down, they went down 0-2. They lost to Placer, which I think we expected. They lost to Elsinore, which Elsinore is they're not a strong team this year, but they're a Division II team in SoCal that plays in one of the best leagues in the state. And then they go up against Del Campo, who by all means is going to be a playoff team this year. And I would not be shocked if they're, a championship contender in Division II. Bear River led for 3/4 of that game, and they only lost 43-48. And I kind of asked their coach about it, and he goes, being the smallest school here by a long shot, the way they played this tournament, he was thrilled with how his guys played. And the other thing too that these guys haven't noticed, and I think what makes it such a big deal for this tournament is Bear River with all sophomores and juniors, these guys haven't had to go on the road in an environment where you just have a hostile and loud crowd and, trying to call your plays and run your offense and everything like that with a crowd just constantly roaring. And this is the first time they really had to deal with that. And I was actually impressed with how they handled the adversity. I mean, the score lines show that, I think they just lost to some teams that were better than them, but I was actually really impressed. It's not often you are impressed with the 8th place team in a tournament, but the way Bear River held their own at this tournament, I was pretty impressed with. So shout out to Bear River for that. But Aaron, I'm going to throw it kind of back over to you. I know we've had a few performances that stood out to you. What were some star performances that you saw?
Yeah, so my Lincoln area athlete of the week is going to be Alicia Ozagueda. Had the 2 goals against Rockland. She actually had 5 goals last night in a 9-1 win over Golden Sierra in the rain. She's just a scoring machine as a sophomore, and I expect her to do some big things in league play once it starts up here very soon. For South Placer, my athlete of the week is going to be Alex Madej, getting back to wrestling. You talked a little bit earlier, Matt, about the Sierra Nevada Classic. Alex Madej won the gold medal at the Sierra Nevada Classic. Anthony Berg of Whitney also won a gold medal. But Alex Madej is 17-3 on the season so far, so she gets the nod there, and she's just been amazing. She made state last year, and I know that she wants to make it back and do even better this year. So congrats to her. Some other performances. Lincoln girls basketball team won the Lincoln Invitational against beating Kennedy in the championship game 56-55. In the semifinal game, Maya Hodge had 26 points and 16 rebounds for the Zebras, so they're off to a good start. I know our colleague Jim Linzow is going to be at Rockland tonight for a really solid matchup between the Zebras and the Thunder for girls basketball. So Lincoln and Rockland competing in a couple of different sports this week. You talked about the Kendall Jordan. Yeah, Jake Williams led all scorers with 22 in that game. Brandon Hill had 19. I talked a little bit about Wood Creek earlier. The girls won the West Park Winter Classic, and Chloe, I'm going to butcher this name. I think it's Prius, had 15 in the first half alone against Fairfield. I'm actually going to be going to watch the Wood Creek girls tonight, and I'll get into that here shortly. There were a couple of teams that were down at the West Coast Jamboree in the Bay Area. Whitney was one of them, even though they're not from my area. Jordan, your Colfax girls were there, and they made it to the championship game there as well. So big things from teams in our area, even competing with some of the better teams in the state as well.
Yeah, Colfax got second in that tournament. Actually, they beat the defending D5 state champs to open it up. So, hey, Colfax, I think we say it every week, but they're just proven that they're a team to be reckoned with. Matt, over to you. Who were some big athletes you saw this week?
Yeah, well, my athlete of the week is Logan Rexford. He's a senior guard, 6 foot. He's leads the team, averaging 20 points a game, and I don't know who's second on the team, but he's way back of that. I mean, Logan is Vista's offense. In that tournament, he scored 81 points in that tournament for 27 point per game average. In the last 4 games, he's averaging 28 points a game. He's their go-to player. He's second on the team in rebounding for a 6 foot guard. So it says a lot about. I don't want to bash on their guys talking the forwards and centers, but I mean, he's second on the team in rebounding, 4 game, third in assists, first in steals. And aside from statistics, he's a quiet leader he's a guy who leads by example. And his forte is his shooting. He's a great shooter. And Coach Verbisky said he's surprised when he misses a shot. That's how good he is.
Oh wow! I mean, hey, that's impressive. It's like almost what's the one stat of? It was something along the. I'm gonna butcher this, but there was some crazy stat like Steph Curry has a better chance of making a 3 than I can't remember the stat. I'm butchering it, so I guess I won't complete it. But it was something crazy along the lines of Steph Curry making a 3 had a better chance of something else.
Yeah,
that seems very routine.
Enough said. We get it.
Yeah, but some athletes of the week I saw this week. I'll say Garrett Dutro had a great Kendall Arnett tournament. He kept his team alive, especially on that championship with several big shots. I have to imagine he probably would have been tournament MVP had Placer won. But hey, you know what? Pinnock, I think, was the most impressive player at that tournament. There were actually a few other players from some other schools that deserve a little action too. Hudson Edwards from Foothill up in Palo Cedro had a great tournament. One of the best players I saw there. And then the other one, Miles Lake from Rio Americano, a very solid player. He had a good tournament. And over into wrestling, Leland Rodriguez, Brianna Packheiser, and Grant Eklund all won their weight classes at No Guts, No Glory. And that gives me a shout out to the Placer boys wrestling who won that tournament actually. And the girls took 7th. So some positive momentum for the Hillmen kind of going into league play. I think they open up league actually against Lincoln. I want to say that's this week. So it's either this week or next week. So or I guess they don't open up league. They've had a few dual meets. They have had a dual meet with Oakmont, but they have a big league dual meet with Lincoln coming up around the corner. So some positive momentum for the Hillmen in that. And then, like we mentioned earlier, Colfax girls taking second at the West Coast Jamboree. Another huge one for Colfax, and now they're getting into Pioneer Valley League play starting this week. So, those girls, I mean, to be frank, I'd be shocked if they lose another game for the regular season. I think that they're going to be riding 2 losses into the postseason, and we'll see where they go from there. But we've got some action kind of picking back up this week as school starts again. I know for me, I've got a double header tonight in basketball between 2 of my smallest schools. I'm going up to Forest Hill, where there's probably still some snow on the ground. But Forest Lake Christians playing Forest Hill in a boys and girls basketball doubleheader. Both boys and girls hoops up there are probably 2 of the better teams in the CVCL. So it's going to be an interesting game, a good little rivalry. Should be a fun game. Then Wednesday, I've got a couple options. I'm hoping to hit Colfax boys soccer against Lyndhurst, but weather permitting, if that doesn't happen, I'll be up at Bear River girls basketball as they play center in to open up some PVL play. And then Friday, I'm going to be over at Golden One Center, where Placer is actually playing against Wheatland in another boys and girls basketball doubleheader. They get to play in the bright lights of a NBA arena, so that should be a fun one. So I'll have coverage of those ones. Aaron, over to you. I know you got a busy week this week. Where are you going to be?
Yeah, so tonight I'm going to be witnessing one of the best girls basketball players in the entire state, and Mary Carter at Antelope. It's going to be Wood Creek girls at Antelope. These should be the top 2 teams in the CVC, but I do feel like there's a gap between the 2 of them. How big that is, I'll have to see tonight. I'm expecting a 14 to 16 point game or so, but Wood Creek girls, they've definitely had a solid non-league play, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do against one of the top 2 teams in the section. Tomorrow, I'm going to be at Whitney, where the Wildcats are going to be facing Fairfield at Whitney. They're the only SFL boys team that I haven't seen any action from yet, and I do expect them to win that game. I'm looking forward to seeing who some of their star players are going to be. And then on Friday, I'm actually going to be helping myself out and you out, Jordan. I'm going to be at 12 Bridges. Hopefully it's not raining. I think Friday is the one day of the week it's not raining, so I think I might be okay. But it's going to be a girls soccer game, 12 Bridges and Colfax, the top 2 teams in the PVL most likely. This is a game that could help decide the PVL title. I think they're evenly matched. I could even see this being a draw with it coming down to when they play up in Colfax later this season. I'm going to predict a 2-2 draw on that one. I think it's going to be a very exciting contest.
All right, I like it. And I don't think I've ever, is this a first in Sports Jam history of someone predicting a tie? I guess we haven't really had sports where
I guess so, yeah.
You know what, Aaron? Congrats to you. That is probably the biggest accomplishment of the show. I like it. Predicting a tie. It's a bold move. I like that. We need more NFL writers predicting ties. I want someone being like, yeah, these 2 teams, 21-21, Texans, Chiefs. I like it, Aaron. All right. Well, that's going to do it. I believe that's going to just about do it for this week's episode. Oh, Aaron, you got more?
No, I was just going to say, I don't know where Matt's going to be at this week.
Oh, yeah, Matt. I'm so sorry. Matt, over to you. Where are you going to be this week?
I would have stopped you. I would have reminded you. Well, I have to say weather permitting, because if it's really pouring down rain, I don't know how many of these soccer games we're going to get to. I mean, I got 4 listed here. Maybe I'll get to 2 of them. But Wednesday, Oak Ridge boys play at Granite Bay, I believe at 3:30, if that's the case. And then Wednesday evening, Folsom girls have a home game against, I have it right here. Oh, against Rockland. Both are league openers. If it's pouring down rain all day, maybe I'll just get to one of those. And same thing for Thursday. Vista girls play at Rio Americano, I believe, at 3:30. And then Vista boys are home against Rio at 7. So I'll at least hopefully get to 2 of those 4 games. And then Friday is SFL opener at Folsom. It should be a good one, especially I think on the boys' side. Delaware comes to town, and from all I've heard about Delaware is, they're a good team, and they fared well at the Ken Arnett. So that could be a really good game against Folsom.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a few Del Oro parents at the game, and they're really looking forward to that because I know Rio Americano beat Folsom, and Del Oro beat Rio. Now, I still think I would pick Folsom in that game, but I think that makes that game a lot more interesting now that Del Oro beat Rio in the way they did, because it makes you wonder a little bit. Obviously, teams match up different, but it's going to be eye opening if Dio can play them close or even maybe take one from the Bulldogs, who I think everyone has as a top team in the SFL.
And everyone plays hard in the SFL, and like we always say, on any given night, I mean, Folsom's good, but they're not the end all the be all. I mean, they can lose that game easily, so they're going to have to play their A game to beat them.
Yeah,
I was
definitely.
just gonna say about soccer. One other thing too, like when it's raining, I, I tried to go up to the press box. And I'm a person like I try to be on the field for a lot of games. I like being close to the action, whether it be for taking photos or just seeing it up close for social media, whatever. But I was like, even I tried to go to the press box for the soccer game on Thursday. The problem is it's so cold up there, and there's other people that are sitting up there and doing the score. It fogs up the windows. You can't even see the action from up there. So it's like I don't really have a choice. I have to go down on the field now, even though it's raining.
You got to hide under the teams like Easy Ups or something like
I
that.
tried. Yeah, I actually tried to do that.
All right. Well, everyone, hopefully we can stay dry this next week, but that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Sports Jam. Does anyone have anything we want to add before we get going?
Good.
All right. Well, that's going to just about do it then. Thank you guys for tuning in. I've been Jordan.
I've been Aaron.
And I'm at
Thank you guys, and we will see you next week.